The lunch rush had finally ended, leaving behind the soft hum of clinking dishes and the faint aroma of coffee that lingered in the air. The small roadside diner, with its faded sign and warm familiarity, had returned to its usual mid-afternoon calm. Sunlight poured through the large glass windows, spreading golden light across the cracked linoleum floor. Dust specks floated lazily in the beams, dancing like tiny stars in a quiet galaxy. To anyone passing by, it was just another day at the Maple Grove Diner, a place where truckers refueled, travelers rested, and locals found a slice of home in a slice of pie. But for Clara Monroe, a woman who had spent the last decade balancing exhaustion and hope, this ordinary afternoon would mark the beginning of something extraordinary. Clara was 35. Though life had carved more years into her eyes, the lines on her face weren't from age but from responsibility, the weight of bills, late nights, and the quiet determination to keep her little world from collapsing. After her husband left her and their newborn son 10 years ago, she had learned to survive on grit and grace. She'd taken this job at the diner out of necessity, not choice, and she'd stayed because it paid the rent, kept food on the table, and allowed her to be there for Micah, her 10-year-old boy with a mischievous grin and a heart too big for his small body. Every morning, she tied her hair into a bun, buttoned her faded uniform, and told herself she could make it through one more day. The regulars loved her, truckers who called her Sunshine, old Mrs. Gibson who came for her usual tea and toast, and the local mailman who left extra tips just to make her smile. But that afternoon, as she wiped the counter and stacked freshly washed mugs, the bell above the door jingled, and everything changed. A group of men stepped inside, and the energy in the diner shifted immediately. The sound of heavy boots echoed against the tile floor, leather jackets, worn jeans, and tattoos that told 1,000 stories. Every customer turned to look. The patch on their jackets read, "Hell's Angels." The air grew tense. Conversations halted. Forks froze midway to mouths. The few remaining customers exchanged nervous glances. One man at the counter leaned toward the manager and whispered, "You're not really going to serve them, are you?" Another tossed a few bills on the table and hurried out the door. Behind the counter, Mr. Peterson, the diner's owner and manager, stiffened. He was a broad man with thinning hair and a permanent scowl, more concerned with reputation than compassion. He muttered something under his breath about troublemakers and bad news. Clara felt her pulse quicken. She'd heard the rumors about the fights, the police run-ins, the danger, but as she looked at the group settling into the back booths, she saw something else entirely. They weren't rowdy or loud. Their faces were tired, weathered by the road. One of them, older and slower on his feet, was helped gently into his seat by a younger member. Another rubbed his temples like a man who hadn't slept in days. For a moment, no one moved. Then Clara took a breath, tied her apron tighter, and picked up her notepad. "You got this," she whispered to herself, forcing her hands to steady. She walked toward them, ignoring the silent stares of the other staff. When she reached their table, she smiled. "Good afternoon, folks. What can I get you all today?" The men looked up, a little surprised by her calmness. One grinned. "Coffee. Lots of it." Another chuckled. "And maybe a slice of that pie that's been staring at me since I walked in." Laughter followed. Low, genuine, and harmless. Clara took their orders, her nerves easing with each exchange. They said please and thank you. They called her ma'am. They joked lightly with one another. There was nothing threatening about them, only the weariness of people who'd been on the road too long. When their meals were ready, she served them with her usual care, extra bread on the side, hot coffee refilled before they even asked. One of the bikers noticed. "You're too kind," he said, smiling. "Most folks won't even look us in the eye." Clara smiled softly. "Everyone deserves a hot meal and a bit of kindness," she said simply. But when she turned back to the counter, Mr. Peterson was waiting. His face was red with anger. He pulled her aside so sharply that her arm almost slipped from the tray. "What do you think you're doing?" He hissed. "Do you know who those people are? You'll drive the rest of the customers away. This diner has a reputation to protect." "They're polite," Clara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "They haven't done anything wrong. They just wanted lunch." "I don't care," he snapped. "You don't serve people like that. Finish their order, take the money, and make sure they don't come back." Clara opened her mouth to argue but stopped. There was no winning against Mr. Peterson's pride. So she returned to her tables, served the bikers with dignity, and said goodbye when they left. Before walking out, one of them, an older man with gray streaks in his beard, left a folded $100 bill under the plate and tipped his head respectfully to her. That night, as the lights dimmed and the chairs were turned up, Mr. Peterson handed her a thin envelope. His voice was cold. "You're done here, Clara. I can't have employees disobeying me. You're fired." The world seemed to tilt for a second. Fired for being kind. Clara tried to reason with him, to explain that she'd only treated them like people, but he turned his back. She gathered her things in silence and stepped out into the cool night air. The walk home felt endless. Her shoes pinched her feet. Her stomach ached with hunger and her heart carried the weight of defeat. How was she going to tell Micah? When she opened the door to their small apartment, Micah ran up to her, waving a drawing he'd made. "Mom, look. I drew us at the park." She smiled weakly, hugging him tight. She didn't have the heart to tell him what had happened. She made him a simple dinner, toast and scrambled eggs, and tucked him into bed with a story and a kiss on the forehead. Later, when the apartment was quiet, she sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. Her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. "Did I do the right thing?" she whispered to the night. The next morning, she woke with swollen eyes but forced herself to smile for Micah. She made him cereal with the last bit of milk and told him she had the day off. When he left for school, she sank onto the couch, wondering what to do next. Around noon, a low rumble began to fill the street outside, deep, rhythmic, growing louder. Curious, Clara stepped onto the porch. Her heart nearly stopped. A line of motorcycles stretched down the block, chrome glinting in the sun. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering nervously. At the front stood the same group from the diner. For a second, Clara froze. Then one of them stepped forward, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Another carried bags of groceries. The leader, a tall, weathered man with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel, approached her. "Clara Monroe?" he asked. She nodded, still stunned. "I'm Hawk," he said, offering a small smile. "We heard what happened. You lost your job because you served us." He shook his head. "That ain't right. Kindness should never cost you everything." Before Clara could reply, the others began unloading their bikes. Fresh vegetables, canned goods, meat, milk, and even a box of school supplies. Hawk handed her an envelope thick with cash. "For you and your boy," he said. Her hands trembled. I can't take this," she stammered. "You can," Hawk said firmly. "You treated us like human beings when no one else would. The world needs more people like you, Clara." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched the envelope to her chest. For the first time in months, she felt something warm inside her. Hope. Word of what happened spread faster than wildfire. Someone from the neighborhood filmed the moment and posted it online. Within days, the story went viral. Waitress fired for serving bikers, then they came back to save her. Messages poured in from strangers. Job offers, donations, letters of encouragement. Local news stations wanted to interview her. People stopped her in the street to thank her for reminding them that kindness still existed. Eventually, Clara accepted a new job at a family-owned cafe on the edge of town. The owners had heard her story and offered her a position immediately. They said they wanted people who led with heart. At the cafe, kindness wasn't a liability. It was the soul of the place. Customers came not just for the food, but to meet the waitress who served the Hells Angels with a smile. Some even brought their own stories of compassion to share. Micah beamed with pride every time someone recognized his mom. "My mom's famous," he'd whisper. But what mattered most to Clara wasn't fame. It was peace. Every night after she tucked Micah into bed, she'd sit by the window, the same one where she once cried in fear, and think about that day. She realized that kindness doesn't always bring easy rewards. Sometimes it costs you. Sometimes it breaks you. But it always eventually comes back. She kept Hawk's note, the one he'd slipped inside the envelope. It said, "The world judges by what it sees. You judged by what you felt. That's rare. Don't lose it." And she never did. Years later, when Micah was older and ready to face his own world, she told him the story again, the day his mother lost her job but found her purpose. "Remember this." "Honey," she said, brushing his hair back. "No matter what people tell you, kindness is never wasted. It might take time, but it always finds its way back, just when you need it most."